Africa. How are you doing? I hope you're doing great, Mama.
I live in the US, so I have dealt with African Americans who are angry that Africans, their brethren in Africa, sold out their forefathers in the past, in ancient days. So they were kind of angry, annoyed with Africa for selling them out. My first fight in the US was with an African American who was angry with me for saying that he is African. He punched me. He said, "Shut up! I'm not African. You African? No, I'm not African." We had a fight. Now, some of these people now want to come back to their land. Yes, to their roots. And instead of welcoming them wholeheartedly with open arms, some African rulers are coming up with problems. You want to carry out DNA tests to do what? There is fact. Fact is that every black man on planet Earth is African. Give our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, like African Americans or the Caribbeans, give them the sense of belonging in Africa, their origin. Don't make them feel like they are not wanted. What's all this thing about DNA test? That's the point that we make at Afroscope. Hey, greetings. I am Harry Agena with the Afroscope project. And I'm bringing you another edition of our series titled Afrocentric Titbits. Majorly, this is a series where we talk about certain contributions of the African people all over the world to the growth of the world. So I've given you a lot of series, a lot of editions of this, including the story of how all human beings, that's you and I and the rest of the world, originated in Africa. And also the thrilling, funny story of how goats and sheep discovered coffee in Africa. Then another one about how university education originated in Africa. Also, the ingenious contributions of African American women called human computers to pioneer space exploration in the USA. And of course, you can find all these on Afroscope.com and Afroscope Facebook page.
Beautiful continent, beautiful people.
The topic today has to do with Africans in the diaspora wanting to come back to identify with their continent. In other words, they finally want to say, look, let's embrace our origin. Again, like the African Americans, a lot of them are now trying to get African passports. Now, let me start by giving the history of the Africans in the diaspora. Everybody knows, or at least almost everybody knows, that majorly had to do with slavery, which started in the 15th century. It started, to be exact, in 1441 AD, where transatlantic slavery trade started. And that's by Europeans. Europeans started crossing the Atlantic to get into Africa to see what they could get, what they could acquire. It's all about acquiring wealth from around the world. So they got into Africa, starting from 1441 or thereabouts. And one of the things that they started with was slave trade. Before now, there has been arguments. See, I live in the US, so I have dealt with African Americans who are angry that Africans, their brethren in Africa, sold out their forefathers in the past, in ancient days. So they were kind of angry, annoyed with Africa for selling them out. Now, there are two arguments about that. Argument number one is that Africans are trying to defend that claim by the Africans in the diaspora who claim they were sold out by Africans at home. And they said, no, the white man mostly came with force. They had guns that we didn't have. We could not match them in terms of force. So they actually forced us into slavery. Yes and no. The yes part of it, let me start with the no part of it. The no part of it is that a lot of the slaves sold to the white man in those days were actually captives, because those days tribal wars were common. One tribe was fighting another, and even in Nigeria, the country called Nigeria today, as an example, which is my origin, using that, it wasn't called Nigeria then. The name Nigeria had not been formed then, but the location called Nigeria today, there were tribes that would be fighting each other, okay? Because it was all about who can grab what, territorial problems sometimes. And in those tribal wars, people were captured. And of course, whoever you capture in war, whatever you do with them, is no man's business. They become your slaves. Now, let me clear something. It's not an African thing, by the way. So let nobody out there who is not African say, yeah, those people, they were always fighting, they were selling themselves. No, it happened all over the world. In every continent, on every continent of this world, it happened. Okay? So, but we are Afroscope, so we are dealing with the African issues. So my point, getting back to the point. Now, so, yes, on the one hand, Africans in Africa did sell some of those captives of war, of tribal wars, to the white man. On the other hand, also, the white man also forcibly took some slaves by themselves. So it was, yes, neither here nor there. It was the two arguments are true about how Africans were sold out to slavery to the West. The focus of today is the fact that those Africans in the diaspora, the descendants of those slaves, again using America, African Americans, a lot of them now want to identify with their continent. They want to come back. Some even want to completely repatriate themselves back to Africa. Say, I'm tired of being American. So, let's go to our origin, Africa, and start getting our passports there. And there is a problem. Remember, this is the same Africa that people have been hypocritically saying, oh, we want our brothers outside Africa to identify with us, and this and that and that. Now they finally got that movement. I know that in the 1970s, when I got to the US, I personally had fights with some African Americans who were so angry with Africans that they saw those of us visiting in America as enemies too. My first fight in the US was with an African American who was angry with me for saying that he is African. He punched me. He said, "Shut up! I'm not African. You African? No, I'm not African." We had a fight because I told him, no, as long as you are a black man, you are African. That's why we had a fight. And that's how much they didn't want to identify with Africa. So I can claim, actually, that I give my own little bit in terms of trying to convince African Americans to identify with us instead of fighting against us as brothers who were in the US together. Now, they want to now identify with us. They now want to come, some of them now want to come into Africa to get Nigerian passport or Ghanaian passport or passport of any country in Africa. Especially it's the West Africa where the slave trade happened much more than any other region of Africa. So they look to West Africa. And in West Africa, Ghana happened to be the harbor of slave trade in West Africa. So a lot of them are tracing their roots to Ghana in West Africa. And yes, a lot of them, Kwame Nkrumah, before he died, the great Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana started this movement to embrace people because he knew that a lot of the slaves were taken out of Ghana. The ones that were not Ghanaians, they even in Nigeria, because Nigeria is not too far from Ghana and all that, the ones that were not Ghanaians, a lot of them were taken to Ghana in the ship, transport them to the West. So somebody like Kwame Nkrumah, did start this move to say, look, let's embrace our people because they, became slaves from our land. Now, again, zeroing in. These African Americans and the other Africans in the Caribbean, especially Jamaicans, usually used to really talk about going back to Ethiopia. The Emperor Haile Selassie, they said he was a god because they revered him as an African father. Now, some of these people now want to come back to their land, yes, to their roots. And instead of welcoming them wholeheartedly with open arms, some African rulers are coming up with problems. I say rulers specifically because I can tell you, because this thing started with Ghana now, who kind of started the lead on embracing African Americans and the rest of Africans in the diaspora to give them passports, their national passports. All of a sudden, they now suspended it. That's what this is all about. Ghana suddenly, recently, a few days ago, I just got the news actually yesterday, that Ghana has now suspended giving passports or nationality to our brothers and sisters in the diaspora. They are now trying to regulate it. And then here's one issue that caught my attention very seriously. The issue about DNA tests. They now want to carry out DNA tests to find out some. But look, before I even finish hearing that part, I say, find out what? What are you going to find out? Are you a hypocrite? First, you said you wanted to embrace our brethren in the diaspora. Now they want to come back. You want to carry out DNA tests. To do what? There is fact. Fact is that every black man on planet Earth is African. So, what is the DNA test for? That's my question. Please, people, ask this question with me. If Ghana or Nigeria or any other African country wants to carry out DNA tests on any African American or any other African in the diaspora to come back to Africa to identify as a citizen of any of the country, are we not supposed to quickly embrace them? The only test I think you should have is to make sure that this person is not lying that he is an African American if he enters your country, or that he is a Caribbean black if he enters your country and want to get the identity of your country. What is the DNA test for? Or you want to find out if his own black is from a different black? Are there two blacks in the world? No, there's only one group of blacks all over the world, and they are all from the African continent. So, what is all this thing about DNA test is my question. Because it's one of the reasons why Ghana is delaying this a great project, a program that they started. They are now delaying it. Now, don't get me wrong, please. I don't want to be seen as being too hard on the Ghanaian authorities. And I don't want to be seen as being ignorant of the essence of DNA tests. No, sir, no, ma'am. The Afroscope argument is that you shouldn't make a big deal of it, because even if you finally find out that these African American or the Caribbeans, that they actually came from Nigeria and not from Ghana, their ancestors, so what? After all, there's something called dual citizenship or even multiple citizenship all over the world. Give them Nigerian passport also. Give them Ghanaian passport also. Embrace them. Make them believe that they belong in their ancestral home. That's the point. Another reason is I think they're getting a little bit greedy. Typical of the African rulers. They want money from every angle possible. Remember, I keep talking about typical African rulers because I can bet you that if you carry out a poll in Ghana, 99.9% of regular Ghanaian people will say, bring our brothers and sisters home. Stop all this making it difficult. Bring them home. They are part of us. Remember, they're not coming as a liability, because a typical African American who leaves America to come to arrive in Ghana or Nigeria or any other African country is wealthier than a member of that community already. African Americans, the per capita income, no matter how poor an American is, or African American is, chances are if he arrives in Ghana, he is richer than a great majority of Ghanaians. So they are not coming as liabilities. And remember, we are even talking about the heroes in the USA. We are talking about global figures like musicians, like all kinds of heroes in their own ways in the US or any other diaspora community outside Africa. They are, on the average, better equipped than a typical African in Africa. I'm not talking about billionaires in Africa. I'm talking about the regular, masses of Africa. So they are not coming as liabilities. They are coming. They have something to add to the system. So what is all this hypocrisy now? First you wanted them, and now all of a sudden you are giving them headache to embrace their origin. Why? In Ghana, they charge $133 to just get the form, just get the form to apply for nationality, for a passport. And then they now charge them, in the process, they charge them another $2,300 or is it $2,200 in order to get that citizenship. I use an example of the difference in mentality between a typical European in many ways. I'm not saying, remember, there are so many things that Africans are much better than the white man or the Europeans, yes. But in this particular instance, I'm talking about, the mentality, the difference in progressive mentality of, an example, American mentality. Okay? I use my own personal experience to talk about it. I migrated or immigrated to the USA in the 1970s. Shortly after, I became an American citizen with American passport. That's not the issue. That's not the point I want to make. The point is that when my British wife in Texas died and I visited Nigeria, something led to another, and I fell in love with a Yoruba woman in Nigeria. And we eventually got married. And yes, we had 2 children in Nigeria, because I will come and go, we will do the family thing. I had the first child, I left, and I came back again. We had the next child. In the meantime, I was planning for her migration outside Nigeria, right? Good. Or immigration outside Nigeria, right? So, the point I am making here is, because out of my 5 children, 2 are the ones that I had in Nigeria. And each of them, this is the point to be made, that each of my 2 children that I had in Nigeria, they got their American passport within the 1 month after their birth. Each of them. they had American passport in Nigeria. I applied for them in the US. When I had them, immediately when I got back to the US, I would apply for their passport. Within 1 month, each of them got their passports, American passports. Have you got the point I'm making there? The point I'm making there is that Americans want to claim their own. Remember, this is a Nigerian American with a child born in his country of origin. And as soon as I had those two children, they were given American passport within their first month in the world. No hassle, no problems. All they needed was that their father, who was originally Nigerian, mind you, is now American. Therefore, they qualify to be Americans. They had American passport. Are you getting my point? The point I'm making, the mentality of ownership of yours. Here we have a problem that people who were sold out, who their parents, their forefathers were sold out, now want to come back, and you are now giving them problem. Remember, I said that I had problems with African Americans in the 1970s because they were angry with us visiting from Africa that we sold them out, that our forefathers sold their forefathers out. They didn't want to be associated with Africa. I did my little part. I remember even in Hollywood when I had to make presentation among the Hollywood stars at that time, like Eddie Murphy representatives, because Eddie Murphy himself wasn't there, I must be honest, okay? But like Will Smith them, and a few other African Americans, because I wanted to do something with them. They refused initially because they didn't want to be associated with Africa. Now these people, the point I'm making is that now these people want to associate with Africa, their origin, and we are giving them headache. We are trying to make life difficult for them. You got it? So, this is where I'm going to stop for now. Okay? Until I come back your way with our Afrocentric Titbits. I have to say to you, bye for now. Thanks for watching.
Make we come together